Thanks for checking in with IGN's coverage of E3. I'm Steve Butts. With me is Mike DePlatter from Monolith, and we're taking a look at Shadows of Mordor today. So Mike, what do we have for everybody?
So actually, what we've got here, this is what we call the Nemesis System. This is kind of the heart of the living world of Shadow of Mordor. This is where you're going to meet and encounter the various enemies that are going to be completely unique to each player's game. They're going to grow as you play through the game. They're going to remember and respond and react, create missions as they're hunting through the world. And I think, in fact, we've actually got one of the guys here that you've met before.
Yeah, this guy, Ogthrak the Serpent, that we saw right at the very beginning, he looks familiar to me. So I've encountered this person before. What I like about this is that each enemy in the game has a motivation, a purpose, and then they actually have a story that plays out. How in the world does all that work? That seems insane.
It is insane. I think the way it worked is basically a huge collaboration all across the team on every system of the game, from the animation, certainly to the writing, to the AI, to the game design, to the level design, to the world building. But I think what we wanted to do is create a sort of emergent world and the player-created stories that you can have in a sports game or that you can have in a real living world. And actually bring them into the action-adventure genre.
So when you normally see a game that looks like this, you think, oh, there's 4 orcs over here, and they only exist because the designer put them in there to be killed by the player, right?
Yep.
But the enemies in your game actually have a purpose, and they're actually trying to achieve things completely independently of what the player's doing. Explain what kind of motivates these guys, what they're trying to get at.
Yeah, and partly, it's a great question, and it's what makes Mordor such a good setting for this idea of a world where you have dynamic enemies. So Mordor is a very, very kind of dog-eat-dog society. It's almost like a prison yard.
Right.
It's a constant battle for supremacy. So in order to move up in the world, the only way these guys are ever going to be able to do that is by showing that they're stronger, that they're smarter, that they can backstab or defeat their opponents and their rivals in the world. So the types of things that they're doing in the world is they're trying to tame Mordor for the Dark Lord and defeat the monsters. They're enslaving the people of Mordor. They're challenging each other to duels. They're forming alliances where they will protect each other and forming gangs and taking on each other. So all of the same sort of actions that bring the world to life and make these various enemies move up in the world also map very, very well to creating, very dynamic mission opportunities and chances for you to hunt them down and challenge them and defeat them, and then ultimately manipulate that whole system as well, because as you take these orcs, bend them to your will, build your own army, make them your followers, you can use the rules of orc society, the fact that it's a constant battle for domination, you can use that to your advantage to actually farm up your guys and get them to the sort of leadership roles, or make them take down your opponents and murder each other. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very much inspired by what we see in Middle-earth, for example, in Cirith Ungol when Sam and Frodo are going into Mordor, and Sam pretty much single-handedly manages to bring down this entire fortress simply by manipulating and terrifying these guys into slaughtering each other.
And so how does that work as a game mechanic? How do I understand what the different orcs are trying to get and exploit those motivations for my own purposes?
Yeah, so what we do is we have a thing called power struggles. Mm-hmm. And power struggles are these missions that are constantly getting created in the world, and they reflect orc society. So a power struggle might be a duel, or it might be a feast where one of these orcs is showing off and getting drunk with all his friends to impress them, or it might be a beast hunting expedition. So these missions are constantly getting created in the world, and the enemies that are creating them are the dynamic, unique enemies that only exist in your game. So, for example, you've got some guy, he starts out life, he's a guard on a tower. He's involved in a riot, he gets a lucky shot in, he kills somebody who's an orc leader, that gets him promoted. Now he's into the hierarchy, now he wants to prove himself, so he'll challenge another orc to a duel, he'll win that duel, he'll grow in power. Then he can try and prove himself to a warlord to get associated. That'll create another mission, which could be an ordeal or a trial where he'll prove himself. Now he's a bodyguard. then his war chief gets slaughtered in combat, he moves up, he takes the war chief's position, and there's obviously thousands and thousands of those sort of paths, but it's really through them constantly battling to move up. And you can exploit that either by ambushing these guys, by hunting them down when they're in the middle of their mission, by taking them down and exploiting that, or by using it to turn them against each other. So it's really pretty limitless.
You can even draw out some of the war chiefs by attacking the thing that you know they're motivated by. There was one of the orcs was a drunk in my game, and so I was able to go after his stores of alcohol and attack them, and in doing so drew him out of his stronghold and was able to attack him in a situation where he was a little less protected than he might have been if I had gone inside to get him kind of in his den.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a really good example. So because it's not a simulation. It's not chess. Like there's flavor and personality to these guys, and the personality that they're seated with, whether they're really commanding, they're really aggressive thugs, they're raving, sadistic psychos, that will affect what sort of missions they want to go on, what sort of relationships they're in. And in particular, the war chiefs, the guys who are the bosses, by the time they've made it up to that position, they've almost certainly made a bunch of other enemies.
Right.
So they don't just walk around the world. They're almost like, I guess, crime lords. They're going to try and stay undercover unless you challenge them, unless you draw them out, and either threaten them, because they can't show themselves to be cowards and keep their position, and they're going to have responsibilities like controlling these forts. So depending on their job, their personality, where they're stationed, you can actually draw these guys out. So yeah, that example of if the guy finds the grog stores really precious, he's going to react if you burn them. If one of them has a particularly close relationship, one of these other orcs in his gang and is his friend, you can grab that guy, make him squeal in terror. That's going to draw out his master. Oh, there we go.
So we just saw Ushgol, the orc that just killed us, move up in rank because he challenged another orc to a duel. So he's getting more powerful, and I presume that he's getting more followers, like a stronger retinue on his side as well. What's the end goal for the player in this? Do I want to own all 5 of those orcs at the top of the army screen there? Is that essentially what I'm trying to do in this game?
Yeah, so early on, it really evolves. So, the first half of the game, you're Talion, you've just been resurrected. It's a little bit more straightforward. You're behind enemy lines. You've got the leaders of Sauron's forces there. You want to defeat them. You're going to destroy them, to destroy the leadership in this area, and that's going to draw out the Black Captain, one of the kind of, tentpole villains that's responsible for your death and the death of your family.
Right.
But then, through doing that, your power grows and it escalates, and you get drawn deeper behind enemy lines into Mordor, into the Sea of Nirn. And now you learn more about the power and identity of this wraith, and that you can do more than just hunt and kill your enemies. You can actually bend them to your will. And now your goal grows with that. Now, instead of just killing them, your goal is to actually build your own army behind enemy lines in Mordor. So kind of very much in a way like Saruman is. The only way to take on and challenge the Dark Lord is to beat him at his own game, is to create an elite army of Uruks in order to challenge him. So, that becomes your goal at this point.
Well, let's talk about this other dynamic element we're seeing. We're seeing, well, first off, this warg lion, or this creature that is to lions what wargs are to wolves. What is this thing that we're seeing?
This is a Caragor. So that's another thing that's really fun about setting the game in Mordor. It's a land that we haven't seen before. It's also, by definition, an extremely dangerous part of Mordor. So all the wild creatures, anything you would normally see in nature, here it's going to be a more dangerous, a more deadly incarnation of that creature, because it's had to sort of fight hard to survive here. So the Caragors are kind of the alpha predators. They're the kind of elite hunters. And there's some other ones we're actually showing as well. There's a Graug, which is this huge towering monster that sort of highly territorial and is in the caves here.
That's the thing in the back of the army screen that you feel like, I hope I don't ever have to fight this thing.
Yeah, you don't have to fight it, but also once you can dominate them, of course, they're extremely powerful, because using the power of the Wraith, it's not only these Uruks, these enemies you can bend to your will, it's also these beasts and monsters.
Well, let's talk about the powers of the Wraith a little bit, because we're seeing all these sort of white magic effects and sort of combat animations. What is this guy good at? What is he doing to sort of even the odds when he's facing down a whole squad full of orcs?
Yeah, so again, that's something in the game. We have a lot of power growth. Early in the game, when you begin, the Wraith doesn't even know its own identity. Talion's closer to his physical skills as a ranger, so it is more about stealth and combat. But your power grows really significantly as you go through the game, and as the Wraith realizes its full power, and that's when you really start to be able to manipulate the world, bend it to your will much more strongly. And it's very, very grounded in how Tolkien talks about power in the books. You know, the power of the ring wraiths, for example, is the power to sow fear whenever they go, the power of terror. Sauron himself, his power over his forces is the power of domination. That's also very much what we see with Saruman, with his army that he built. Power means domination, fear, bending the world to your will. You know, it's the opposite of freedom, in effect.
Do you feel it's somewhat subversive, though, to use this license and position that power or that ability on the hero side?
Well, I think it's incredibly authentic. You know, this sort of idea of using power and using the power of the enemy against him, it comes up really strongly, especially in Lord of the Rings. You know, obviously the first time it appears, Boromir grabs the ring and he's like, this is a gift. We should use the power of the enemy against him. If we did that, you know,
all our troubles would be over.
Ruthlessness is the only way to fight against the Dark Lord. Saruman obviously explores the same idea in a lot of depth. Like, the only way you've got any chance of taking on Sauron is to raise an army that's as powerful as his forces, because these orcs are so ruthless. How are you going to stand against that sort of hatred and that sort of dedication? Frodo offers the ring to Galadriel. She acknowledges that she's tempted, but if she took it, Galadriel with the ring is a very different proposition to when Bilbo or Frodo wear the ring. But even Sam, when he has the ring and he's standing on the frontier of Mordor, his head is filled with images of power, with raising armies and charging in and conquest. So it's such a fundamental core what if. Like, it's probably the biggest what if that comes out of reading those books. What if Gandalf took the ring? What if Galadriel took the ring? What if Boromir took the ring? You know, what would have happened if that approach and that strategy of using Sauron's power against him had been used? So it's an incredibly good opportunity, especially in a game, because games are so much about power and the growth of power as well. So to put those things together, you know, we're really excited that it could be very authentic. And of course, the notion of a hero is interesting as well. Like, I think Boromir is a hero, one of the most interesting heroes in the book, and he's heroic because he was willing to sacrifice himself for what he perceived was the greater good.
Right. Well, so we saw a few exercises of that power here, where he's actually the Wraith is actually dominating the other orcs and then sending them on missions to sort of subvert the power structure that already exists. He's got this ability to ignite barrels. He can ignite campfires, drop down. I think there's slabs of meat hanging to draw in the lions, and then even he's got this beehive in front of him here he can drop down. And some of the enemies are more affected than others, right?
Yeah. So those ones are the Morgai flies. They're almost like Sauron's spies in here. What's really important to us is the interaction between the Nemesis System. So you've got these different enemies, they've got their own personalities, they've got their own strengths and weaknesses, and then on top of that, the world itself, we want to be a very, very dynamic ecosystem with, you know, the wildlife coming in, the ghouls coming up, enemies entering combat, you know, the strongholds that are sort of very dynamic with the alarms going off, and so we want all of those things to interact together. So you can face these extremely strong enemies, very, very powerful enemies, but there's always a way to take them down. You can always find a weakness to use against them, whether it's one of their fears against them that is going to strip away some of those strengths and enable you to bring them down. And plus, they're going to remember that as well. So, and plus, what else is fun is they can gain those strengths directly from their interactions with you. So depending on the guy's personality, he might have a fight, he might get burned. He could go multiple ways from that. He could develop a fear of fire out of that and run screaming the next time that ignites. Or, depending on his personality, he could develop a hatred of burning, and the next time you try that tactic on him, he's just going to become enraged and become twice as dangerous. So it really makes the way every boss fight in particular, has the potential to change up and to surprise you and to present opportunities to plan and bring different strategies to bear is kind of what makes it so fun, I think.
One thing I love is these little close-ups. Like every named villain gets like a little cameo moment, and you get introduced to them. It's very much like a sports-style presentation. I know you have a background in sports games as well, so it's interesting to see that used here. I didn't think I was going to like it when I saw it at first. I thought, oh, that seems a little cheesy, but the more I got into it, the more I thought, no, these orcs are also stars of the game, and getting to know them is really critical to understanding the context of your experience.
And the thing that they can do, and this was a huge amount of effort, is they can put you at the center of your story because they remember what you've done before. So, someone, when you're in the game and the game actually noticed and paid attention to the fact that 2 hours ago you created this inferno, this firestorm within a stronghold that burnt this guy and you killed his friend.
Right.
When the game remembers that and acknowledges that, it's like, we don't want people to just write their own or record their own stories of this is this amazing thing I did in Shadow of Mordor.
Right.
We want the game to actually acknowledge that and pay that off and go, yeah, that was memorable and that was cool, and to embody that through the personalities and the stories you make with these enemies.
A lot of people seeing this game, myself included, have made some very favorable comparisons between the gameplay and the exploration that we see in games like Assassin's Creed, or the combat system from the Batman Arkham games. Were there any particular inspirations for this, or any particular way that you put your own stamp on that type of gameplay in Shadow of Mordor?
Being sort of completely open, Arkham was a big inspiration at the beginning for us in a number of ways. As the best way to treat a license is to just do the best possible game that you can try and do.
Sure.
And secondly, as a benchmark, for melee combat and for the stealth, for being a predator who's behind enemy lines. But then I think as we built on that and as we evolved, then what we really looked is making this an ecosystem and a sort of a different type of living world. And I think that's where we've sort of, really it's got its own flavor. And when people pick it up and when they play it, a lot of the feedback we're getting now, and certainly here at E3, is that this is unique and even that it's different to what they expected. So.
Yeah, well, I love the counter system. The combat feels very fluid. It's very friendly to button mashers, but there's also a little bit of depth. As your character grows, what types of decisions will you make about the ways you're going to play the game?
So there's a few there. We put so a couple of things we wanted to do. One, we wanted to actually have very, very strong growth in how powerful you can become, as you said, along the axis of your wraith powers, your ability to dominate, bend your enemies to your will, build your own army, but also your strength. So within the actual skill tree that we have,
that guy Ogthrak.
He's yours.
Take him
now.
down. Take him down.
He's deaf. Oh no, he lives. And there's getting back on track there. He's now your minion.
Right.
But every single skill that you get through gaining experience, we really wanted it to be an actual new ability, something cool and new that you can use in your toolbox. So, and there's a lot of skills as well. So, but then additionally to that, we also wanted to do something, very authentic to the lore and something tied to our Nemesis system with the weapons. So you're not swapping out swords. The sword that you start the game with is the same sword you'll end the game with, but you can customize that and upgrade it and make it unique through how you play by carving runes onto it. So very much like we see with Sting, where by the time we see it when Frodo has it is, I'm Sting, I'm the bane of spiders.
Right.
The achievements get actually carved onto the blade, and that fits so nicely with our Nemesis system, because you're defeating these unique, epic enemies. They increase in strength. That strength then gets manifested when you do defeat them. They drop a rune. That rune can get carved onto your blade.
Right.
So you've really got these sort of kill markers along your blade that are upgrading it, and on your dagger and on your bow. So you can customize it to your playing style as well.
I like the idea of the little airplane silhouettes beneath the cockpit, but now they're on my sword.
On the sword.
Right.
And it's nice because you go in that rune screen and you get the little portrait of the guy you've taken down. So it really is your little mementos, as well as being able to upgrade your weapons.
Right.
And also, you can control your own difficulties. So you can send death threats. You can tell one of these guys you're coming for them. If you do that, he's ready. He basically goes into training, he levels up, he becomes more powerful, he doesn't go anywhere without a gang. So you've given yourself a harder fight, but you also give yourself a chance of collecting epic loot, of these really epic runes that you can inscribe. And then the third thing, we have a sort of economy of all of the different side activities that you've got. You know, one thing, of course, that's really exciting and cool about Middle-earth and Mordor is there's so much lore and depth to explore. So the collectibles and the mysteries and the treasures that you get to hunt, they also, you know, will provide you with resources that then let you upgrade your core stats and unlock some of our other abilities and also grow your weapons. So we've got sort of multiple systems for growth working. And as we sort of, number two things, we let you become very, very powerful. We sort of want that end game. Your enemies are really strong, but you can build a very powerful army, and also you can be very, very dominant in combat. We want to give you all the tools to really take the fight to Sauron within Mordor and kind of see how epic we can make that.
Well, the game looks great. It's due out October 7th. What's left to do? What are you guys doing between now and then? Polish?
So much. You know, obviously there's bugs, obviously there's polish. Balancing is, you know, it's crazy when you've got so many moving parts as this. And then, of course, we're incredibly excited about getting the game into more and more people's hands. So, you know, between now and release as well. And the thing is, we've obviously talked a lot about the Nemesis system because we're so excited about that, and we think that's a big innovation, and we're bringing something new. But that is ultimately just one part of the game. There's so much more we want to talk about with our story, with the characters you meet. You know, Christian Cantamessa was our lead writer for our story mission, so we've got some great characters in that. That part of the game we're really proud of, the collection and exploration of the world. So, you know, there's so much more we want to talk about and show as well.
Great. Well, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us to talk about Shadows of Mordor. Stay tuned throughout the rest of the day for more coverage from E3 on IGN. Up next, we have Bethesda's new multiplayer action game, Battlecry.